Welcome to There Is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs, and I've been in business for the past 28 years. All right, in today's podcast, I'm going to cover a question that was asked to me by a caller named Drew, and he asked me, what about meal timing regarding workouts? That is a great question. Before I get into that, let me thank our first sponsor, Jonathan and Lyn Gildon, the Gildon Group at Realty Pros. They currently have over 275 star reviews on Zillow. They're absolute hustlers. They're going to get out there, whether you're selling, whether you're buying, they're the people you need to check out. I can honestly vouch for them. I'll put all their contact information in today's show notes. All right. So meal timing, does it matter? Let me give you some facts on it first. All right. So we store up to 2,000 calories of carbohydrates in our body. And that storage is in the form of what is called glycogen. Glycogen is stored carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are what fuel our body during exercise. They're essential. We store roughly 400 grams of glycogen in our muscles and another 100 grams of glycogen, think carbohydrates, think glucose, in the liver. So when we sleep, we typically burn off those 100 grams of glycogen in our liver. That's what we tend to burn off first, all right? So you may wake up in the morning, you're having a little bit of hunger pangs, you're feeling a little hungry, possibly. Some people don't, some people go the other direction, but if you do wake up feeling a little bit hungry, that could be why. Because when the liver glycogen has run out, it starts to send a signal to the brain that says you're low on blood sugar. So your blood sugar drops a little bit, and then lo and behold, you start to feel a little hungry, all right? Now, you're not really hungry because one, you have another 400 grams of glycogen stored carbohydrate in your muscles. So, and then we have literally an unlimited amount of fat, not that we don't need to take in nutrients, but of course we do, but we're really not hungry when we think we are, at least not in this country, in the United States. I'm not saying there aren't hunger issues here, of course there are, but for the most part, what we are experiencing is some low blood sugar, some burnt off liver glycogen, and sometimes just a desire to eat. So we're really not hungry. So when you hear that information, then you might think, well, then I don't need to fuel for my morning workouts or my morning training. All right, so let me get into that a little bit. First off, that is incorrect, okay? So some more facts. So we have roughly 500 grams of stored glycogen, as I already said. That's about 2 hours worth of exercise, because again, we burn mostly carbohydrates in our exercise. As the intensity is a little bit lower and the duration goes on a little bit longer, we burn a greater percentage of fat, but we're always burning carbohydrates, and that is a good thing. We need it for exercise. So those people on low carbohydrate diets and are trying to exercise, that's not very wise, and it's absolutely not scientific, because we need the carbohydrates to move the muscles. All right, so if your workouts aren't going to last longer than 2 hours, there's not a critical need to make sure that you have upped your glycogen levels or refueled in the morning, or have carbohydrate or food substances while you work out. There's not a critical need for it. In other words, it is what it is if your glycogen levels are full, and that is a big if, because that depends on if you're eating the right kind of carbohydrates day in and day out. So there's a lot of ifs in there. But if your glycogen levels are full and you're not going to be working out for longer than 2 hours, it's not a necessity that you refuel prior to working out from a glycogen standpoint. If your workouts are going to be longer than 2 hours, and you might think, well, who does that? Many triathletes do that. Many endurance runners do that. Many endurance swimmers do that. So their workouts can be very long, especially on the weekends when they do what is called long, slow distance days. Their rides on the bike can be up to 5 hours, some of these people. Their runs can be 2 to 3 hours. So they absolutely are going to go past that 2 hour time. If that's the case, then it's essential that you eat some form of good complex carbohydrates prior to exercising. Now here is what the research says, Mr. Drew, and everybody else out there asking. You should have your pre-workout meal 2 to 3 hours prior to exercise. Now that sounds a little tough, right? I mean, if you're getting out on your run at 7 o'clock in the morning because you're trying to avoid the Florida heat, that means you need to have eaten between 4 and 5 o'clock, right? That's kind of hard to do. And ordinarily, we tell people in those scenarios to have around 3 to 4, maybe up to 500 calories worth of carbohydrates that are easy on the stomach and a little bit of protein and no fat. But this is really more about the timing of it all than what to eat. But that's tough, right? If you're getting up that early and you have to set your alarm to eat. But those are some of the things that we need to learn to do. Another way around that is to eat what we call glucose polymers during workouts. And those are like little 100-calorie shots of gels or goos or liquid carbohydrates that you can take along with you during exercise, all right? Which some people doing the really long bike rides, the really long runs have to do both. They have to take along the glucose polymers or the liquid gels, which have glucose polymers, and they have to eat a pre-game meal. So that's for the pretty intense, the people doing the real long stuff. Okay, so 2 to 3 hours prior is when we would have our, what we call our pre-game meal, pre-exercise meal. All right, now let's say that's not you, and your workouts are shorter than 2 hours, closer to 90 minutes or an hour or something like that. So the need to eat, unless, see, there's all these ifs that make it so hard. It's because you can't control people, right? You can't make them do what they're supposed to do. So unless they're not eating carbohydrates on a regular basis, then there's no need to eat something prior to exercise. Notice I say need. I'll talk about, the last part of this will be what if you want to. I'll talk about that. But the need is not there. If your workouts are going to be shorter than 2 hours, you don't need to eat as long as your glycogen levels are full. How do you know if they are? Well, if you're not dieting and you're taking in somewhere around 60% of your diet in carbohydrates, which is pretty easy to know because your MyFitnessPals and these other food apps, which a lot of people use nowadays, which I do recommend, is going to tell you what percentage of your diet is carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So if you are eating a normal diet, meaning around 2,000 calories at least for a man and 1,600 for a woman, you know, that's both of them are on a little bit of the lower side, but at least that, and you're taking in 60% of your diet in carbohydrates, most likely your glycogen levels are just fine. And you don't need to eat something for a workout or a race, a 5K, or like I know in Mr. Drew's case, he has a son that plays baseball. Sports like that don't need to. I'm going to get into want to in a second. Need to necessarily fuel because you have enough carbohydrates to keep you going. Okay? Stored in your body. Now, what if you want to? What if, you're not one that handles low blood sugar very well? There's a lot of people like that. Once your low blood sugar gets down there, once your blood sugar gets a little lower, I should say, you start to feel maybe a little bit more lightheaded. Your mood's not as good. You're feeling a little lethargic and those types of things. And blood sugar does really, really matter, and it matters more for different people, meaning where they are on the scale with their blood sugar levels. So if that's the case, then it is okay to have a little snack prior to exercise. A little snack might be like a carbohydrate bar, a banana, a couple slices of toast, an English muffin, a half a bagel. So again, notice it's mostly carbohydrates. Yes, that's what you want for exercise. That's what fuels exercise. So that is okay to do. Now, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to do that about an hour before, not just before. Why? Because there's such a thing, as you probably know, or could at least assume, of gastric emptying. In other words, your body is busy digesting the little bit of food you put in your stomach. So a lot of the blood is shunted from the muscles and goes to the stomach and small intestines to help you digest the meal and absorb the meal. So little energy is taken away from your body while you digest, and so you're not going to have as much energy to exercise. That's one physiological effect. The other is the fact that it might upset your stomach a little bit. So you got to be very careful when doing your pre-game or pre-exercise food routines. Test the foods and see if they work for you. That's why I say there's like have to eat. Working out more than 2 hours, you're gonna have to find a way around getting up early or not liking to eat first thing in the morning, because you're gonna have to refuel. You're just gonna have to. You're gonna bonk, which means you run out of glycogen. And not only is that not a good thing for your performance, it's not very healthy, and you literally could pass out or feel very lethargic. I mean, you have to eat. Once your glycogen is gone, I know that some of these diets try to sell that as ketosis and a good thing. It's not a good thing, all right? You're going to be very, very lethargic, faint, lightheaded, all those things. So that's not a good thing. But if you're in that camp that's not training for 2 hours and you want to kind of top off your stores because you feel a little bit more energetic, you don't like the rumbling in your stomach and all that, then yes, have a little carbohydrate snack meal about an hour before, but make sure that you've tested it and it's something that you can digest fairly well. Some people will do what other people do, and that's a mistake. They might say, oh, I heard so-and-so had some oatmeal, one of those little 100 to 150 calorie oatmeal packs prior to working out. Okay, that might be fine for so-and-so, but you might do it and find out that it upset your stomach. So everybody's a little different. The rule of thumb is just, a little bit, like, again, that oatmeal will be fine if you've tested it. A half a bagel, a little bit of toast, maybe one of those Cliff Bars or something like that. And just make sure you've tried it, tested it, and you can do that. All right? I hope that helps. Now, let me add this to it to wrap it up. The most important time to fuel if you want to stay consistently energetic is after you exercise. Some people tell me they can't because they feel nauseous or they don't have the desire to eat. It's like, well, you got to be disciplined and make yourself eat, because studies have shown that following exercise is the best time to replenish your glycogen stores and get your body back up to where it needs to be. So you really need to figure out a way to do that. Some people do it with liquid nutrition. Some people do that with bars. Some people simply eat a small meal. Now, all this is assuming that you're at the body weight that you want to be at, because that comes first and foremost. So we always have to balance our calories and not start doing what everybody else is doing when we're trying to lose weight and they may not be. But at the same time, it's a dangerous situation to go without eating and into a 2-hour workout without that, because you will run out of glycogen. So no matter what your goals are, that's a critical thing. All right, great question. Please keep them coming. And now I'd like to thank our second sponsor, Chiropractic Physician Doris Antos, who is located in Ormond Beach, Florida, and she offers all kinds of services. Very open chiropractic. Not only adjustments, which are great, absolutely lead to greater recovery, speaking of recovery, but also tons of modalities. And the great thing is she's going to get to know you to decide what's best for you. And I vouch for her, and like our other sponsors we have now and have had in the past, all of the contact information will be in the show notes, so you can simply click and go. All right, until next time, be Max Fit, be Max Well.